occur on both levels. Here, though, you're going to also find metamodel patterns like mind reading. Mind reading would be things like, I know you're dissatisfied with my performance. You're going to want to know, well, how do you know that? Because the person has said there's a relationship between some value and some evidence that you're using, but it's not specified. So mind reading tends to indicate that there's some evidence relationship going on. So again, the reason I'm going over some of these metamodel categories is to give you some clue-ins to help identify when people are going to be indicating beliefs to you. So you have mind reading here. It's where people build beliefs about the internal experiences or evaluations of others based upon things that they're seeing. Obviously, between cause and effect, there's a whole metamodel category called cause-effect. Which is, you make me feel this way. And this would be kind of a classic belief. My boyfriend or girlfriend makes me feel this way, which means that they don't love me anymore. Something like that. And this is going to be a relationship of a cause to an evidence. They make me feel this way. How specifically do they do that? And so cause-effect can tune you into potential belief relationships regarding how two things are linked together in a causal relationship. If-then statements are typically causal relationships as well. Also, one other metamodel pattern I think you'll recognize when it can cue you into beliefs, especially about cause and effect, are universal quantifiers, which are words like all the time, every time this happens, I never am able to do this, so on and so forth, would give you information about cause and effect. I always do poorly on my math tests, so therefore, I don't know, whatever, I'm genetically deficient, or my math gene got twisted the wrong way, or something like that. So these are some of the kinds of things that can indicate when you're getting close to a belief. And they can indicate where in the belief you might want to focus. So if we were to take beliefs like, I can do anything that I want to do, in order to get a complete belief statement, you'd want to find out, how do you know that? What is going to be evidence that lets you know that this is true? And what makes it possible? How do what makes it so that you can do whatever you want to do? And that becomes sometimes a very interesting thing to do. I often find that people only express part of a belief. And one of the things that I'm saying here with this model is that in order to have an entire belief, what you want to be able to do is to get all of these different components. And what I'd like to have us do first, I'm going to do some examples, but I'd like to have you do an exercise where you get a chance to ask questions and get complete belief statements, because then sleight of mouth is going to operate on these belief statements. And in particular, we want to know things about it. If somebody says, oh, the world is against me, there's not that much you can do even with sleight of mouth yet, because you need to find out the relationship that the person is defining. Like, how do you know that the world is against you? What causes the world to be against you? That is where you get some of the most interesting information. Because is what causes the world to be against you because of something in them or something in you? Is the world against you because of who you are, because of the way that other people are? Somebody has a classic paranoid belief, people are out to harm me. What causes that? That's where you start finding quite interesting things. For example, one of the things that Sigmund Freud said was that paranoia was often caused by the need for the person to feel important. Well, if people are out to get me, I must be a very important person. I have a lot of effect on people. Why else would they want to get me? And this, of course, becomes interesting just in eliciting the belief to find out some of the things that are behind it. And if you're working with a belief that you have yourself, sometimes you might not have ever considered that. Might not have ever considered, well, I have this belief. Where does it come from? There's the classic tale of the lady who, every time she roasts a ham, she cuts it in half, puts it into her roaster or whatever, and someone asks her, well, why do you cut it in half all the time? She says, doesn't everybody? No. Well, why do you do it? Well, that's the way my mother always did it. I thought that's the way you were supposed to. And one day she's talking to her mother and she says, oh, by the way, I've been meaning to ask you, how come you always cut the ham in half to roast it? Her mother says, oh, well, that was just because the roasting thing was too small to fit the whole thing in, so I just always cut it in half to fit it in. Of course, the woman had certainly a good-sized roaster. She had just built this belief that that's what you were supposed to do in order to roast the ham. And sometimes you'll find that you might have a belief where you go, well, I don't know what I think causes it. It might be an interesting thing to explore, to find out.
Yeah, Robert, on the last portion, the circle part,
Yeah.
do you find sometimes that becomes a whole sort for people?
Yeah.
Example, my boyfriend looks at me very intensely. The effect is he makes me feel special. The meaning is, A, he loves me. B, you could also go another sort, which is, I'm really not special. He just makes me feel that way.
Right.
Or when boyfriend leaves, takes a piece of him or herself.
That's right.
With him. I find during grief situations that's what people do. They take the last portion out.
Yeah. One of the things that Richard is bringing up, and I think it's, of course, another very interesting element and very important element, is that you can have a particular piece of evidence might have multiple meanings. Well, it could mean, if he looks at me intensely, that he loves me, or it could mean that he's trying to fool me, or it could mean that, all kinds of things. It could mean that I have special power over him. I know how to draw, I'm charismatic, instead of he loves me, or something like that. And, of course, in your lives, you are often exposed to multiple belief systems. And at times you might actually pick up 2 or 3 different belief systems, and this is where you get interesting things like conflicts, because this evidence could mean number 2 or 3 things to you. And the question is now, which one is valid? Or, as we were talking about earlier, I can have things that relate to identity versus things that relate to behaviors or understandings about other people. And it might mean one thing with regard to my identity and another thing with regard to what other people think, which also can become a conflict. So this is where, of course, life gets interesting. And this, of course, is the structure that makes these magic tricks of sleight of mouth possible, is that things have multiple possible indications, multiple meanings, multiple causes. Now what I'd like to do is to have you do a little exercise just to start getting tuned into belief language, in which you pair up with somebody, or actually maybe get into a group of 3, I think would be better. And what we'll do is to just gather this information about a particular belief. What I'd like to have you do during this exercise is to either pick, number 1, a belief that you have regarding yourself that you would like to explore. And what we might want to do is have you pick some positive beliefs and pick some negative beliefs. Positive beliefs meaning, what is something that you do believe is a resourceful belief about yourself? Like you might believe, I'm a creative person. How do you know that you're a creative person? Well, because I've done these and these things. What's caused this to happen? What's caused this relationship? Okay, so you might want to fill that in. What is a resourceful belief? And you might want to find a limiting belief. Limiting belief might be something